Hello BookTube, my name is Elizabeth. Welcome or welcome back to my channel, Bookends and Books. This video is a wrap-up of the Remember December Rereadathon. It was a brand new event on BookTube. I was about to say this year, but it was last year. It was in 2023 and now we are in 2024. So it was an event that I was a host of. Is that a sentence? Anyway, I was a host of the event with Anne Novella and 5 other co-hosts. And I want to start by apologizing for being a bad host. I made one video on December 1 and then I basically disappeared from BookTube. And same thing on the Discord. I was present for a couple of weeks and then I basically disappeared. So I'm very sorry about that. I will be a better host next year. It was just circumstances. Nothing bad happened. It was just, I guess I was exhausted and Christmas was coming and I had things to do, and it was just a whole bunch of circumstances that made it more difficult for me to be as enthusiastic about BookTube as I wanted to be. So I guess I took a little break without me planning taking a break. Anyway, so I nevertheless reread some books, and I want to share my experience of rereading with you, because that was the point of the event. It was to talk about the experience of rereading. If you were new to it, we wanted you to try it, and if you were an old hat at it, we wanted you to indulge in it because it's something very agreeable. So for my part, I have two kind of experience. So we had 3 prompts. We had the prompt of read a book that you've basically forgot, read a book in a different manner, and then read a book to make sure what you think about it. And the third option, you could have reread a book that you loved just to make sure that you still loved it, or you could have reread a book that you didn't really like just to make sure that you really didn't like it, or perhaps it changed your opinion. And for me, that is the option that I chose for that one prompt. I read one book, I reread one book for each prompt. So for this last prompt of checking to make sure that you love a book or not, I reread this. This is, the title in English is Trading Secrets, and it is by Paule. And that book won the Goncourt. So the Goncourt is like the Booker or the Pulitzer of French fiction. And that means it's supposed to be the best book of the year. There was a bit of a controversy when it won, because there was also a book by Houellebecq that was in contention, and everybody wondered why Houellebecq didn't win. I also read way back, not this year, but I read the Houellebecq book and I did not find it was extraordinary either, so I assumed someone else could have won anyway. But the award went to that book, and I read it at the time, and at the time I thought it was just so boring. What I remembered of the book, what I said in my video on December 1 about my pile of possibilities, was that this was the story of 4 feminists who were complaining because they didn't have a man in their lives. I was wrong. I was wrong. That is not what the book is. It's about 2 feminists, 4 women, 2 feminists, all of them having no men in their lives, and 3 and almost 4 of them complaining about the fact that they have no men in their lives. And I also said that when I read it, I found it very boring because nothing was happening, and that now that I was older and wiser, I would not find it boring because there was nothing happening. Oops! I did find it very boring, at least until page 150, 170. So this is a novel where nothing happens. So it's really all about the characters. So we have 4 women. They are staying in one house in Kansas. And it is a fictional university of, how do they call it? Middle way? Kansas. It's supposed to be in the middle of the United States, and it's supposed to be the Oxford of the United States. And there's this woman who is hosting a conference of feminist studies or something like that every summer. And she has invited 3 people to stay in her house. And it's not a big house, and it's not a luxury house. So it's a bit uncomfortable. So there's the host, whose name I've already, anyway, the names are not really important. So there's the host. And then there's an older actress. She is supposed to be some sort of Brigitte Bardot, or perhaps what's her name? Lola Brigida? Anyway, something like, I forgot her name. Anyway, some sort of international actress who used to be very famous once upon a time and now has fallen on hard times and is basically an alcoholic. I'm not saying that Brigitte Bardot is an alcoholic at all. I'm just saying that she's supposed to represent the archetype of the beautiful woman, and now that she's old, she has difficulty earning a living, and she ends up going to this conference just to read texts. and the texts are selected by the host. There's one of the writer whose texts are being read is also invited, and there's also the best friend of the host who is also there because her husband just dumped her. And so this is supposed to be a book about feminism, even though it's really just the host and the best friend who are really truly feminists. The other two are there just because they happen to be invited. It's not so much because they are working in academia and that they are defending women's rights and all of that. They just happen to be women and are claiming their own rights, but they're not necessarily activists. And so what happens is that we are the day after the conference is ending, everybody's waiting for something. They are waiting for somebody to pick them up, and they're waiting for the time to leave or something like that. And they are reflecting on the last few days, but also their lives. And it's boring. For a book like that to work, in my opinion, you have to be interested by the characters. You have to feel for the characters, and you have to live with the characters so that you are interested in everything that they think. And the problem is that before I truly knew all of the characters enough to be interested in that, it was page about 170. I sort of noticed that at page 170, I was invested in what was about to happen in between quotation marks, because nothing happens, but that I was interested in the fate of the characters. Because it took that long for the author to build the characters. So that means that for the previous 150, 170 pages, I was just waiting for something. The characters are waiting for someone to pick them up. I guess it's the same for me. I was waiting for the author to pick me up because really not much was happening. And it's a book all about reminiscences. There's a character at the beginning that she's supposed to visit a zoo. So I figured, okay, at least we're going to have the visit to the zoo in real time. But no, then she jumps from one character to another. And when we are back at that character who was supposed to go to the zoo, she has already been to the zoo and now she's reminiscing about it. So this book is all about reminiscence. It's all about thinking and overthinking your past life, perhaps your future life. And anyway, it's all about thinking, and it's not particularly interesting thinking. And the other thing that surprised me is that this book is supposed to be about feminism. If you Google the title, Trading Secrets, or in French, you will see that the newspaper articles are that the Goncourt jury decided to reward feminism, or decided that feminism was the theme of the day, or something like that. The women in there, they're all obsessed by how they look, which is a bit odd. And also, it very much opposes a woman having a career and a woman having a family. It's written almost black on white that if you choose to have a career, you will have to sacrifice your family. And I thought that very, very odd for 1990s feminism. This won the Goncourt in 1998, so we are almost in the 21st century. And to me, that sounded like 1970s feminism, not 1990s feminism. And I thought, oh, wait, this is France. This is written by a French person, even though it's set in the United States. It's a French mind who wrote that book. And I think that French feminism is at least 20 years, if not more, behind North American feminism. Because to me, this is not a feminist book at all. This is not a book that advances the state of women at all. It's really behind its times. And the book did not age well. I had to look for that book quite afar. Well, I found a copy at the Ottawa U Library because the Ottawa Public Library doesn't have it. And across the river, the Gatineau Public Library doesn't have it either, which is not normal for an award-winning book. It should be there, and it's just not, because nobody cares for that book. And it's not remembered fondly as one of the best Goncourts ever. It's generally thinking of as a mistake. So I confirm that this book is boring. So basically, so the prompt was reread a book to make sure how you feel about it. The reason I thought I would feel differently about it is that this book is about middle-aged women who don't have a man in their life, and it's a little bit my situation. So I figured perhaps I'm going to have a kinder view of these characters, but it turns out it's not the characters the problem, it's the author. It's the book is boring. so yeah, this is a boring book, and I do not recommend it at all. I didn't like it the first time, and I still do not like it. Then the second prompt, another prompt that we had was to reread a book in a different manner. Well, I actually reread somewhat two things. I started by rereading in the same format, and that would be this. That is a Charles Dickens A Christmas Carol, but the version by Walt Disney. Well, not necessarily Walt Disney personally, but by the Disney Corporation, with Mickey as Cratchit and Scrooge as Scrooge. And that's a book that I've been reading since I was a kid, and I think I read it every Christmas. I'm not sure it's a tradition, but I read it in December pretty much very often, and I indulged and I reread this. But I also reread in a different format. I listened for the first time to an audiobook version of the original by Charles Dickens. I read the Charles Dickens, I don't know if I can call it a short story. I guess it's a short story more than a novella. I read it in French years ago, but I've never read it in English. And I listened to the audiobook version narrated by Patrick Stewart. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It was fun. It's a Christmas Carol. It's fun around Christmas. So that was a total success. And finally, for the last prompt, which was in fact the first book that I reread, it was the Pastoral Symphony by André Gide, and that's a book I've basically forgotten. So what happens is that I know I read this for school. When I was about 15 years old, it was mandatory reading, and I know that I read it because at the time I read all the books that I was supposed to read. But I remembered nothing of it, so I reread it. And it turns out that it's a very weird book to give to 15-year-olds. So this is the story. Well, first things first, we have an unreliable narrator, because this is some sort of journal written by a man who wants to tell us a story of what happened in the past year and a half. And what happens is that he was called to one of his parishioners, because he's a pastor, who was dying. So when he gets there, it's far away in the countryside, it's a place very remote, and the woman is dead, so there's nothing he can do about it. He just prays. And then there's a lady also there, I think a neighbor or perhaps a niece, I don't really remember, of the old woman. And there's also a girl by the fireplace, all dirty, disheveled, making odd sounds, and he is told that the girl has been living there. She is some sort of servant without really being one, and that she is blind, and because the old lady was deaf, the old lady never talked to her, so this poor girl has never learned to speak. So she is blind and mute and just has no manners. She's dressed in rags and she's all dirty. And anyway, so the pastor decides that it is his Christian duty to bring her back and try to help her. So that's what he does. He takes her back to his home, to his wife and his 5-6 children, I don't remember. The wife is not happy about it because, of course, it's a burden for her. Because she is going to be the one who's going to have to take care of her. She's the one who's going to have to wash her, to clean her, to feed her, teach her how to do basic stuff. But the pastor is kind of says, I'm going to help, and he does. So he teaches her how to write, how to speak. So how to speak, how to write, and basically gives her an education. And it's a bit of a Pygmalion story, because after a few months, I guess, the girl becomes a beautiful young lady. She's 15 years old, supposed to be super pretty, super intelligent, super this, super that. And of course, the man falls in love with her. And he complains that his wife is made for unhappiness and that his wife makes him very unhappy. Anyway, so we have an unreliable narrator, and it doesn't end well for the girl. I don't want to give too much away, but of course it doesn't end well for the girl. For him, not much happens really. Life goes on. Yeah. So I thought, what a weird book to give to 15 years old to read. The story of an older man falling for a 15-year-old and then blaming his wife for that. It's odd, very odd. And that's the second book that I read by André Gide. The first one that I read, well, technically it's in the other way around, but the other book of Gide that I read was The Immoralist, which is about a man who dilapidates his fortune on travels, and because he wants to go to places where he will find boys. Again, something very creepy. So yeah. It was odd. I don't know if I'm going to read, and perhaps I'm going to try another one. Just give Gide another chance, especially if he writes short books like this. It doesn't take very long to give him another chance, because he won the Nobel Prize of Literature, and I have to say his style of writing was better than I remembered. He writes well, but I don't know if it's enough to overcome the creepiness of the situations, because it's creepy whether you like it or not. It's just plain creepy. I have a hard time finding the literature beyond the creepiness. So yeah, that was my rereading experience. I was kind of hoping for better, because I was hoping that I had forgotten a masterpiece and I would rediscover a masterpiece, but no, I just forgot a regular book about a creepy subject. So anyway, that was my experience of rereading. But because I chose books, well, one that I knew I didn't quite like and one that I had completely forgotten, I cannot say that I completely enjoyed all the books that I reread. The rereading of this, that was just wonderful. That was just absolutely wonderful. But for the next Remember December, I think I'm going to pick out books that I'm more familiar with, perhaps, and that I know that I'm going to like a bit more. But I did enjoy rereading a lot, and this year, so in 2024, I want to reread more. I don't know exactly what shape it will take. I won't put any numbers. I won't say I want to reread one book a month. But I know that I want to add rereading to my reading diet, because it's good to reread. And when you read a book for the second time, you remember it so much better, because you already have some sort of basis of, okay, this is what I remembered from the first time around, and then you reread the second time, and then you grasp more elements from it. You understand things better, and it really makes for a different reading experience when you reread a book. So I want to do it more this year. That's it for me. Let me know in the comments if you participated in Remember December, or if you reread other books last year, and what's your experience with rereading. And I will see you in the next video. À la prochaine!